don't even have the strength. Glory, let me know if you can see me. Please join the live stream. I, I think my network is better now. I can see that it's not lagging. Glory, please leave a comment if you can.
Glory, please leave a comment if you can.
Okay, I can hear myself.
Yes, because I was able to join, so that's why I hear yourself now.
Oh, fantastic. That's
So
good.
like the network is not okay, but
Have you sent the link? I'm going to share my screen now so that we can get started.
Ma, the email is going out now.
Please send it quickly. I'm ending this call because it's entering the live stream. Hi everyone. It's been quite an unfortunate morning. We wasted about 41 minutes trying to get this live together. From messy networks to messy links. But we are here now, so we'll just make the best of what we have. So, my name is Victoria, and I'm the lead consultant for Ace Edward Travel Consults. Forgive me because it's been, like I said, a very crazy morning, but we are getting started now. I'm going to be sharing my because this screen is going to serve, this template is going to serve as a guide today. So, I'm going to start by saying that 2026 has just been an interesting year, if I do say so myself. It's been from one changes to another, or attempted changes. Say to myself, uh, attempted changes, but it's nothing new. Changes are a part of life. Policy changes, immigration changes are a part of life. So I would say that we are sort of used to it. So the topic today is from campus dreams to visa approved. Your complete 2026 study abroad roadmap. But first of all, I'd like to introduce our company. The company started in 2019, so that's almost about 6 to 7 years ago. And it's been an incredible journey so far. It's been from one roller coaster to another, which is why I started my conversation by saying that there has been a lot of policy changes. Because imagine a company starting in 2019 and the very next year we had a lockdown. We had a COVID lockdown. Nobody was, going anywhere. Borders were shut down. And that was the, will I say, precedence to all of the changes that we've experienced so far. But at the end of the day, people still travel, right? Approvals are still giving out. Even myself, I'm in Canada right now, and I came to Canada in 2023. Sorry, 2025. That was last year. So your dreams are still valid because if I can still come 2025 with all of the topsy turvy changes, I mean, anybody can still, travel abroad. We've been in this business for such a long time already. We've seen so many people traveling, and we're gonna have a testimonial towards the end of the life where we have someone that came in. I think we helped him in 2021. I think about 2021 thereabout, and he came to Canada. Now he has his PR. You know, we're gonna have that. So, but let's get started, right? Let's not waste. We've wasted enough time. I don't want to waste so much time doing any more introductions. So, I've spoken about the company as briefly as possible. What we are going to do now is just like move on to the next thing, right? Which is policy changes. So I really want to get into policy changes, right? Now, there were a lot of policies across board, and I say across board is because it's a country. It actually started with the UK. It started with the UK, then we moved to Canada was changing quite a bit. And then there was Australia, there was New Zealand, there was USA. So there've been quite a number of policies that have been affecting traveling just in general. But it has also helped us to open our eyes to other opportunities across the world because people like to go for the top five or top six countries, that is the UK, Canada, USA, Ireland, New Zealand, and Australia. So those are the top six countries. And what's so interesting about these top six countries is that they actually even share the same database, but we'll get to that later. So people want to always go to these countries. But because of the changes of policies, it has brought to light other type of other countries that might not be in your top six, but they are also good enough for you to travel to. Countries like France, countries like Finland, countries like Portugal, countries like Austria, right? Many European countries that are really good, that you can get really good, solid education from. I think most people already know you can get solid education from Germany, so I wouldn't even say people don't know about that, right? If you want to study something in computer engine or engineering, Germany is one of the best places for you to go and study, these types of programs. But a lot of people didn't know that you could travel to places like Austria, places like Malta, that you could actually have good solid education in those places. So let's just run through some of the policies that I would say has taken place of sorts. So one of them would be just the hike in price, right? The US, which is was just very recently, the hike in the visa fee, that's one of them. And there's also just for the UK changes in whether you can or cannot live in the UK after your study. So that's pretty much changes in will I call it like the postgraduate the postgraduate permits and things like that, right? So I don't know where this. Okay, so yeah, your indefinite, they call it the indefinite, the UK call it indefinite leave to remain, right? There's changes in that, and there's even still more changes. There was changes in whether or not you can bring your family, because it's not only single people that want to go and study abroad. I mean, people who are married with want to go for their master's degree or their PhD degree, right? But they don't want to leave their family behind. They are so close to their family. They don't want to spend for masters 2 years or for PhD 5 years away from their family. That's a long period of time if you think about it. And so there were a lot of changes surrounding those policies that allows you to bring in your family member into the UK. It also is the same thing with Canada. Canada also decided that there are only a few programs now that you can use to bring in your family. So these are some of the changes that have occurred, and there's quite a lot more that we will not be able to cover fully in this live stream. But usually when you are traveling abroad, you always have to take note of these changes, of these policy changes. And to be honest, it's at this point in time it happens almost every month, and that's why we are always kept up to date. As to move on to what are the best countries now, we've talked about the top six countries, right? And I've also mentioned some other countries that we are beginning to see people get interested in going to. So, what are the best countries? What countries will give you easy entry? What countries will help you with your career path? What countries will give you permanent residency, right? In truth, in all fairness, I always say for me, one of my top, I would say, top country would remain Canada. And that's because even with the changes in policies that we've been able to see coming through, you are still able to do certain things, right? Again, I use myself as an example. I'm a permanent resident here in Canada, right? And I came in last year. I could have chosen to come in anytime because, again, we've been in this business since 2019. But I just decided, you know what? Let's do the year before, which is 2025. And I'm here, right? And I'm here in this country in 2026. So it's still one of the countries where their policy changes doesn't choke you, right? It's not, I'll give you an example. So you want to go now, you want to visit the US, you have to have $15,000 as a bond. Now, what is a bond? A bond is like, we are giving you this visa, we are holding on to your money. If you don't come back, well, come back. We have held on to your money and we'll still deport you regardless, right? So that's what a bond is. And how many people have $15,000 to keep as a bond? So these are the things I'm saying. Like you have countries like Canada where even the changes may not be best, but it's still fair enough for people to be able to come into their country because they still desire people to come into their country. Right? They're not trying to pursue you. They're encouraging you to come, but they're just making changes because of politics. So Canada still remains one of the countries with straightforward applications. The United Kingdom, yes, they might change policies here and there, but they still remain one of the countries with a more straightforward process. So if you are someone that wants to go and study alone and you're not looking to stay, or you don't mind the length of stay to be able to get your indefinite leave of residence, then you can still go to the UK because, to be quite honest, they have the most straightforward process. So these are some of the countries. You also have Australia, you have New Zealand, they still have a straightforward process, but the problem is there's just a lot of things going on. And then you have France. I love France so much because aside from the fact that if you want to go and study, France is really, really cheap and even cheaper for people that know how to speak French, how to write in French. Their process is really straightforward. You don't need, there's no drama involved, nothing. It's just a straightforward process. And we'll talk about one or two of these countries as we move down the line. So, again, you have countries with less flexibility. You have the US, you have Finland. It's less flexible, not be US, I already explained why it is less flexible. First of all, just their policy changes is usually not fair, right? It's never fair. And aside from the policy changes, there's the interview wait time. The interview wait time is absolutely ridiculous. And you know what's so funny? You would think it's just a African thing, but it really is not. Because, for example, I'm here in this country, living here, and if you live here as a permanent resident or whatever the case is, except you're a citizen, if you're not a citizen, you're a permanent resident, you're a student, whatever the case is, to even get a US interview is worse than if you are living in Nigeria because it's about 700 plus days. In Nigeria, it's like 300 plus days. Here, it's about 700 plus days. So you can imagine the level of unfairness, right? And it's so crazy now because there's a FIFA World Cup coming up and they're trying to open slots for interviews right now. But of course, that's for visiting visa, not study visa, and you literally need a bond for that. Okay, so let's now get into, we've talked about policy just to enable you to fully understand why you need to take note of these policies, why they are important. They're important because they help you to make informed decision. If you don't know about the policies, if you don't understand the policies and how it affects you as a potential immigrant or a potential student that wants to go and study abroad, then you are not ready to go abroad. Yes, you always have to pay attention to the news, to the immigration news, and the new things that come up every now and then. So, now let's get into how to get started, right? Now, so this is the cruise of the matter. This is where the training sort of starts from. It's very, very important that when you want to go and study abroad, you do your research. You do your research. Starting from whether you are even eligible in the first place, right? You need to know what your stance is. You need to know where you stand. Usually when you come to our when you talk to an advisor, right? You have what we call the questionnaire that we send. Now, this questionnaire is sort of like a guide because we need to understand what your background is. We need to know what your interests are. We need to know what you are looking forward to. We need to know whether you have the capability to go for this particular thing that you think that you want to go for, right? That way we are able to advise you correctly. So let's take an example. I would love to take an example via the chats. I don't know how. I feel like I add someone to the call? I want to see if I can add somebody to join me on this call so I can use the person as an example. Please let me know in the let me see if I can add somebody. I'm not sure. But it would have been so great if I could add someone on this call right now and then go through the person's profile to give a sense of what I'm talking about. But just give a generic example. Now, let's say there's someone called Bumi. Let's say Bumi is a person, right? And Bumi is say she just finished I wouldn't know. She just finished university. Let's say Bumi finished university and Bumi is like 22 years, right? Bumi is like 22 years old and she just finished uni, but she wants to go abroad for her master's degree. Now Bumi walks up to an advisor when he walks up to any of our advisors in Lagos, Nigeria, and she tells them, "Oh, I just finished uni. I studied computer science. Let's say Bumi studied computer science. I want to go abroad." Now, there are a series of questions our advisor would ask her. The first one would be, "What is your country of interest?" Right? So Bumi says her country of interest is, let's say, the UK. Oh, no, let's say Australia. Actually, let's use Australia now. I feel like I've spoken about the UK and Canada a lot and the US, so let's do Australia. So Bumi says, I want to study in Australia. So the advisor says, okay, that's good. Now, let's now look at your background. The first thing is, yes, you already told me you studied computer science. Okay, so what was your CGPA, right? Because the advisor needs to know what Bumi's CGPA is. Now, if you don't know the meaning of CGPA, it means cumulative grade average point. It is that point that you see at the end of your transcript, right? In your transcript, is that point that makes you know whether you are 2-2, high 2-2 or low 2-2, high 2-1 or low 2-1, or you have a first class, because it's a accumulation of all of the points from your years of study in the university. That point is very important because Bumi can say, oh, my cumulative grade average point, my CGPA is 2.2. 2.2 means nothing to an advisor. Yes. 2.2 means nothing to an advisor, or second class lower, second class upper. No. What an advisor needs, or what you need, even if you were checking it yourself, is the actual point. Is it 3.1? Is it 3.2? Is it 3.12? Because the numbers matter. Anybody that is under anything from 2, I think about 2.5 to 3.4 to 3.49 is a second class lower candidate. But there's different grade of second class. That's another thing you must understand. There's different grades of second class. There is second class lower, and there's second class lower upper, right? So this grade is important. Why is it important? I'll get to that part. Now Bumi says, oh, okay, I'm second class upper. And then the advisor has to find out upper what? What's the grade average point? And Bumi says, I have a 4 point. Because a 4 point is a high second class upper. Yeah. A 4 point is a high second class upper. That's very good. Now, she says a 4 point. The advisor says, great. So you want to go to Australia, you have a 4 point, which is good. What is your budget? That is the next one. Because the advisor wants to know whether you need a partial scholarship, a full scholarship, or you have the means to go. Because at the end of the day, money is very relevant to this process. So, Bumi says, I have a 20,000 USD budget. Now, here's the thing, and this is why I say when you are going to study abroad, you must do deep research. Or if you're going to meet an advisor would have had all that information for you. But if you are doing it yourself, you must do deep research because she has given us vital information. She's 22 years old. She's a computer science student. She has a 4 point CGPA. She has a $20,000 USD, 20,000 USD budget. That is good, right? It means that Bumi is very capable of paying her own way through school. So, what the advisor will be looking forward or looking at will be trying to get her a partial scholarship. Because one thing Australian universities are good at, Australian university and UK universities are very good at, is providing you with some form of scholarships or some form of bursary fee. Now, what's a bursary? It's more like, okay, the school fees is 15,000. So let's use okay, UK for example. The school fees is £15,000, and we are giving you a dean bursary. So they'll be like, okay, instead of paying £15,000, we are removing £3,000 from your school fees, pay 12,000. Right? They have cut down the cost of your school fees because they've given you that sort of scholarship. It's the same thing with Australia. They really do like to give some form of scholarship, right? Or bursary, whichever the case is. They will either give you like a 25% scholarship or 20% scholarship. And in some cases, they will give you 50% scholarship. But those cases are very rare. You have to probably be very good, have journals and all kinds of things for them to be able to give you that type of scholarship. But for the most part, you can look forward to a 20% scholarship or 25% scholarship. So this is why we say do your deep research, because every country has its schools with its perks, right? These are perks of going to school in Australia or going to school in UK. Realize that I didn't mention Canada because Canada schools are not known for giving bursaries. The ones that do are very rare. There's probably like 1,000 schools in Canada, and out of 1,000, probably 100 would be able to do that. It's a rarity, but it's not a rarity for schools in Australia. It's not a rarity for schools in the UK. They do give these type of things, right? You can always, if you are doing the application yourself, you can always ask. So let's get back to Bumi. Now, Bumi can pay her way through school, but Bumi has a 4 point. As an advisor, one of the things you want to make sure is that even though Bumi can pay her way through school, she also still needs to get that 25% discount, because $20,000 for Bumi is not just covering her tuition fee, it's also covering her living expenses, right? You think about that, it's a lot of money. So, as an advisor, you want to look out to see if Bumi can get like a 25% scholarship, which she would get because she has very good grades. So, these are the quick key criteria. You need to, first of all, find out if you qualify. Now, let's look at somebody else who is not Bumi, who doesn't have a lot of money. Let's say Hassan, right? Hassan, oh, let me not use Hassan. So let's say Blossom. Okay, Blossom also studied computer science, but he didn't come out with a 4 point. He came out with a 3 point, and that's a second class lower, but of a higher grade. He came out with a 3 points. Hassan doesn't have what's it called, 20,000. He doesn't have 20,000. Hassan even barely has enough money. Let's just say Hassan has about 5 million naira. So we're going to use naira for Hassan, right? So Hassan has about 5 million naira. That's all he has. And he has a 3 point. He studied computer science, but he also wants to go abroad for his master's degree. Now, you can see that Bumi and sorry, I changed the name to Blossom. I don't know why I'm saying Hassan now, but I guess let's just stick to Hassan because Hassan is stuck to my head. Well, yeah, let's just say Bumi and Hassan are like worlds apart. They are different. They are different in all ramification. They are different in terms of money. They are different in terms of what they came out with as per their CGPA. But they are the same in terms of what they studied, and they are also the same in terms of their age. So let's put Hassan as well in the age bracket of 22. So what can Hassan do? You have a 3 points and you don't have money. You begin to look into the countries that can actually accommodate you. Yes, Hassan has gone to the advisor or has said, oh, I want to study in Australia, but you don't qualify. Not because, not because, first of all, you don't qualify because of your budget. You don't qualify because of your CGPA. Let's say Hassan got a first class. Then you can say to him, you know what? If you have a first class, pursue a scholarship, because when you have a first class, you can find scholarships, right? But Hassan doesn't have a first class, so you can't even say pursue a scholarship in Australia. So what is he going to do? Then you look into Europe. You look into Europe because Europe can accommodate Hassan. You look into places like Austria because Austria can accommodate Hassan with his budget, by the way. Because at the end of the day, you look into France. France can accommodate Hassan because their tuition fee is very low, right? Same thing with Austria. Finland is not as low. Finland is actually high. It used to be low a couple of years ago, but I think the general interest made the schools increase their funds. You also, which other country? Okay, Malta is out of it now because Malta has a very huge restriction on the number of students that they bring into their country. It's a very small island, so we understand why there's a very huge restriction right now. But a couple of years ago, Malta was part of it. But then there's also Italy, there's also Portugal. So these are places that Hassan can go to because guess what? He qualifies for these places and his money qualifies. But there will not be any scholarship for Hassan because Hassan doesn't have a first class. So I've given you two different individuals. I've given you their profiles and I've helped you to understand the things that you have to look out for. So you are looking at your academic qualification. You are looking at your English language. And this is not for all countries, by the way. English is not compulsory for all countries. English is not compulsory for Australia. It's not compulsory for sorry, English is compulsory for Australia's most of their schools. I'd say most of their schools. You need IELTS academic. It's not compulsory for the UK. They don't care. It's not compulsory for Canada. For most of the schools in Canada, they don't care. It's not compulsory for most of the schools in the US. It's not even compulsory for the schools in France because they speak French. But they require you to submit some sort of letter that says you were taught in English. It's stupid, but yes, you just have to do it. You go get it from a lecturer in your school or something, right? So I'm in the master's part of things. I'll come down to the BSc in a bit. But these ones are just really basic stuff. Number seven is not necessary at this point. That's usually during the what's it called? The visa processing. So, but typically your basic admission criteria is your academic qualification. So let's come down to the BSc. So okay, before I go down to the BSc, let me break it down properly for MSc. So MSc is your academic qualification. So that's your BSc certificate, your academic transcript. Very important, right? So if you want to go for a master's, you need to have your BSc certificate, your academic transcript. You have to have that, right? You have to have English language if you are going to certain countries. So if what's it called, Australia is where you're going to go to, you need an English test, right? Either a PTE or IELTS academic. I always just recommend IELTS academic. You need IELTS academic. That's for Australia alone. If you were going to the UK, if you're going to the US, if you're going to Canada, you don't need that, right? It's not necessary. You can write it if you were seeking other opportunities. And by other opportunities, I'm talking about scholarship. If you are seeking scholarship, you must write the English test. If you are seeking scholarship for the US, you are writing TOEFL. If you are seeking scholarship for Canada or UK or Australia, then you write IELTS academic, right? US TOEFL, Canada, Australia, and UK IELTS academic. Okay, that's if you're seeking scholarship. But if you're not seeking scholarship, then for Canada, UK, US, the English test is not compulsory. You can write it if you want to. Maybe if you want to take your chances a step further. You also need your international passport. I mean, if you don't have your international passport, are you even ready to travel? That's the question I always ask people. I mean, if you don't have it, it means you are not ready to travel. So you need it. You need your proof of funds at some point in time, depending on the country. And if I start breaking that down, that will take this webinar to like the next 5 hours. So, but you need your proof of funds for certain countries at the admission stage, but not all. One of the countries you need that at the admission stage would be the US because their flow is quite different. Their flow is you actually send your proof of funds to the school after you've gotten your admission, right? So it's usually not very compulsory at the beginning. Then your statement of purpose for master students, it is too important. It is too important because how do you want to convince your department that you know what you are doing? Right? Your statement of purpose, you are telling them who you are, You are telling them what your interests are. You are telling them what you are coming to that university to achieve and what you're going to achieve after the university. So, very important. Your CV is very important. And I'll give you guys a quick example before I leave admission criteria. So I remember sometime, I can't remember the year right now, but we had a client. The client was interested in going to the UK. The client had, I think he had a third class. Yes, he had a third class from uni, but he had left university like 10 years ago. So he decided that he wanted to upgrade himself. I think there was something going on in his office, so he needed to upgrade himself academically. And he came to us with a third class, by the way, but a 10-year experience. Guess what? He got his admission. Why did he get his admission? Because he had achieved so much in 10 years that his third class did not matter anymore. He got an admission for a particular program that looks at your CV. Yes, it's not all programs that look at your CV, oh, by the way. Some programs, very few. And an MBA is one of those programs that would look at your CV and can give you a can give you a master's degree offer just based off on how good your experience is. So your CV matters as a mature student, as someone that wants to go for a master's. Now let's go to BSc quickly. BSc academic qualification is just really, really simple. If you have SATs is for the US. You have to have your SATs for the US. You have to have your A levels for UK. For UK, if you don't have your A levels, you're going to start from something called the foundation. So that means if you have only WAEC results for for the UK, that's your country of English interest, you're going to start from the foundation level. Yeah. Okay. So if you don't want to start from the foundation level, then you have to have your A levels. Okay. So, but there are some instances where you may or may not get an admission even with a WAEC. It has happened to us. We've gotten admission for people with WAEC, and it wasn't foundation level. It was proper. And it was because those people, after they left school, they had experience. You can see where his CV is working again. They had a 1 year experience post secondary school. So you can see how the CV came into play. So, but there are also cases where you don't even have to have experience and you can actually get. It depends on the school. But typically, the rule of thumb is A levels for the UK when you want to start from the BSc level. Then you have countries like Canada and Australia that don't need all of that. Your WAEC result is good enough for them. Some couple of years back, they used to take NECO, but they very rarely take NECO. I can tell you it's probably only two schools right now in Canada that takes NECO. There was one, Brandon University, that cancelled it in 2019. No, 2020. Right? So NECO is not really something that everybody takes, right? So, well, it is what it is. Just have your work. Now, another thing to pay attention to, just the way you pay attention to the CGPA of a transcript, that's how you pay attention to the scores of your WAEC. Because if you come and you say you have, let me break it down for you. Let's say you have English literature, A1, English, B2, mathematics, B2. What's the other subject? Let's say commerce, C4. You say commerce C4, and then you have maybe government. You say government, you have another C4. Now, I have mentioned what you would consider 5 credits. But when you are studying abroad, nobody cares about English literature. English literature is not considered a subject abroad when you want to go and study abroad. In other words, I have counted what in Nigeria is considered 5 credit, right? When you want to travel abroad, that is not 5 credit, that is 4, and you need 5. You need what? You need 5. So you also need to pay attention to what you have in your work. It has to be 5. Mathematics, English is compulsory. It's usually non-negotiable except you are going for a program, and that's usually in Canada. So for Canada, they have this, maybe say you want to go for a pre-medicine, they have like a pre-med, they have a pre-law. It's like a foundational program because they want to test whether you have the capabilities to actually go into that program. So usually they can overlook that you don't, very few schools though, that you don't have maybe up to, they can take 4 if you are going for a pre something. But if you are not going for a pre something, you want to go direct, you must have your 5 credits. And English and maths is extremely compulsory. And depending on the school, they can tell you they want all of it to be B3. I think there's a school, it's a college. It's one of the toughest colleges to enter in Canada because their criteria is very difficult. Algoma, that's the name of that college. You need a B3 average to get into their schools program. What does that mean? It means your maybe your 5 credit has to be B3. But then you have other schools that will take a C6 or a C5. So you can see how important these things are. You have to look at it when you want to get admission into anywhere. You go to their school page and you read through. It's a lot of reading, but it would save you a lot of headache. So I've spent so much time here already because I really wanted to explain very well how important knowing your eligibility criteria is, right? So we have things to put in place. I've kind of mentioned it already, but you must know your grades and where you stand depending on the school. Then you now determine, okay, which course can I go for? Pretty much they work hand in hand together because if you say, oh, I study computer science, I want to do a master's in computer science, you have to go to the master's in computer science page and check through and see whether you're eligible. You don't see, guys, one important thing, you don't go to a school's page and look at they have the general information. No, you have to go to the department where you want to study. Department of Computer Science, Department of History. You have to go to the department's own page. Because if you go to the general page, it will give you general information. If you don't go to the department's page, you will not know that there are specific things that you must have before you qualify for admission. So that is a tip for you right there. Now, that's why I said you have to do your deep research, take your IELTS, etc., etc. So I've covered some of these things already in my conversation, right? Now, we are now into the visa part of things. What are the things that you're going to do after you gain admission? Right? So you are in the visa part of things. Sorry guys, just a slight interruption. I need to so you've gotten your offer. Congratulations. That is one step out of 2 steps, right? Congratulations to you on doing that. What next? Now, I usually say this thing before you get to this point where you are running helter skelter to put your documents for what's it called, visa together. At the very start, before you even lay the foundation, before you lay the first email or message to the school or application, you have got to put your documents together for your visa. You have to know what your visa entails. Because by the time you get your admission, you would have no time to start running helter skelter in most cases. Because sometimes, depending on the country, the admission may not come in on time. So imagine your admission coming in late, and then you now that's the time that you're not running helter skelter to go and look for, put the things you're supposed to put together for your visa. Guys, that doesn't make any sense. You're going to waste time and you most likely miss your deadline. So I always say this, you must, while you are running together to gather your documents for admission, do the same. At least have a plan for your visa documentation as well. So when you get your offer and you have to start your visa process immediately. You don't want to waste any time. And there's a reason why we say these things. A country like Canada, and it has happened before, a country like Canada can have like, or a school, let's just say a school like Brandon can have maybe 50 seats for a class. Let's say a class in management, and they want to take only 50 students. What do you think would happen if they give 100 students admission? They have only 50 seats to fill out, and they give 100 students admission. What do you think is going to happen? It means that at the end of the day, you see those 100 students that they gave admission, they are going to only take 50. They will not take beyond 50. Yes, they will not take beyond 50. They would do what they call a first come first serve, because they know we've given 100 students admission, but not 100 students is going to get visa, and not 100 students will be fast enough to get their visa. That's another thing. Who is fast enough? So that's why they can give you an excessive amount, an excessive amount of of admission, because they know that some people will be denied, or some people will not come back to them on time. So if the first 50 that comes to them on time are the people that they will give, they will say, okay, welcome to our school. They may be able to accommodate an extra 10, because it happens. I know Cape Breton, there's a school called Cape Breton that has done that severally. They will be able to accommodate an extra 10. And maybe there's another extra 10, they'll say, okay, oh, this university that is near also, they've not filled their position. It's like, you go and we will talk to this university for you. That school has done it before. They will do a collaboration with another university. But then what happens to the remaining 30? Let's say out of the 30, 20 did not even get their visa. What happens to the remaining 10? They'll tell them, sorry, oh, but we don't have space for you anymore. It has happened. This is the reason why once you get your admission, you start your visa process. And to do that, you must have already put together all the things that you need. You've gotten your admission, so you have your admission, you have all the documents you submitted to get your admission, because they are required for you for your visa process. Your bank statement, you have it put together. Your bank references, you have it put together. Your statement of purpose, yes, there's different statements of purpose, or they call it letter of intent. So let's use letter of intent. What is your intention to go to this country? Your letter of intent, very important. You write it down. Other important documents, your birth certificate. If your birth certificate got burnt or eaten by rats, you need to go and get a new one. Go get a new one, okay? Or you get this, call it, you can get a new one, but that's in Abuja. So usually, if you are outside of Abuja, you do something called an attestation. You get an attestation. What if you have a sponsor? Your sponsor needs to bring all their documents, their ID, their pay slips, their bank statement, and an affidavit. I know most of these things are not listed here, but again, this slide is just like a guide, just to know at which point we are. So they need to get all of these things. So you can comment in the group chat if you would want a list of the general list for admission and the general list for visa requirements. So just leave a comment if you want it. So you need to have put all these things together. before you get your admission letter, so that you don't waste time, so you don't fall into a situation whereby you're one of those people the schools will tell, oh, we know that you've gotten a visa, but we no longer have a space for you. That has trampled your plans. So that's just it. Make sure that you have everything put together. Now, in this next slide, it's just, yes, we are talking about education, but many people don't know that there are different types of visas. Just because you see click here to apply for your visa, you need to make sure that you're clicking on study visa and you're not going to click on tourist, work, business, transit, permanent residence, family, medical, none of that. That you're clicking on the right sort of visa. Every country would always put it there. Student visa, study visa, whichever the case is. So I've already mentioned some of these requirements for visas. Your international passport is a no-brainer. All the documents you submitted for your student visa is a no-brainer. Your passport photograph is also very important for many of these countries. And another thing, they have specification. I remember when I was getting my photo, my photo taken, the specification for the UK is different from the specification of Canada. Now, if you find that very difficult, because it's not all the photography studios that will get that specification. I especially like Studio 24 because once you go there and you tell them the country you are going to, they have your specification for you. So save yourself the headache and just go to Studio 24 and take that picture. Just tell them, oh, I'm going for student visa for this country, UK. Okay, they have it. You don't need to stress yourself. So passport photograph, your proof of fund, I've said it, your statement of purpose, which I also call letter of intent, your CV, your travel itinerary. Yeah. In some cases, you can write an itinerary for student visa, but usually travel itinerary is very, very important for tourism visa, but not important for student visa. So there's that. Okay, we've already talked about this, right? So this is more like a reiteration. Okay, all the things that you need to take note of before you apply for a study visa, which is just your language test, your that's usually for master's students, but even BSc students can write a detailed SOP. Now, another thing I want to quickly touch on before we call the live stream an end is that certain things that happen. Now you've done your study visa. Sorry, you've gotten your admission. You've applied for visa. You have gotten your visa. Congratulations. What next? This is something that a lot of people don't think about. They have zero plan as to what they're going to do when they arrive a certain country. There's no pre-arrival plan, there's no departure plan, there's no post-arrival plan. These things are very, very important. They are very, very important. When you want to study abroad, you must have, if you are going to use your phone, because depending on the phone you, all phones have something called notes. On the notes, you put a checklist. I remember how I still have my checklist till today. You put a checklist of your what all the steps you're going to take to achieve what you want to achieve. So you want to study abroad. What are the steps to get your admission? What are the steps to get your visa? You put it there. Also now have to have, what are the things that I will need as I am approaching the airport? What are the things I need as I am arriving at my country of destination? You need to be strategic, right? So you need to pay attention to so many things because you don't want anything to cause you any delays at the airport. I think I remember one of the things that I forgot at the airport. I'll give myself as an example. I remember when I got to the airport, I had the address of where I was going to, but for some crazy reason, I didn't have the postal code. Yes, postal code. If not that the immigration officer was a kind person, she had to Google the postal code on the system, because for some reason I probably wrote it somewhere, but I just couldn't find where I wrote it down. Postal code. That is how important it is abroad. When you're going abroad, postal code is not important in Nigeria. Nobody uses it. I don't know about any other African countries, but for Nigeria, nobody uses postal code. But when you're abroad, your postal code is a must. You must have it. You must know it. So you just don't have. It's not just the address. You must have the address plus the postal code, because the postal code is where your mailbox is, and they send mails a lot in foreign countries. So you must know it. So these are the things we are talking about. Tiny, tiny things that you would not even consider. I'll give you another one. Something happened to one woman last year. She was a student going to Finland. She had submitted all her documents, everything was good. She had received her visa. She was at the border and they asked her, can we see your bank statement? And she couldn't produce her bank statement. She had not printed it out. Okay, do you have an app? Nothing. Guys, they sent this woman back to Nigeria. They told her to buy a return ticket and go back to your country. This is someone that had a valid visa. She had already made plans. She had sold everything. And they were sending her back to nothing. This is the reason why pre-arrival planning, arrival planning is important. Pre-arrival planning, arrival planning is very important. What are they going to ask me at the airports? What are the documents I need to have with me? I had all my documents. I didn't take everything, but I took photocopies of it. I had them in my bag, I had them in my phone. Anything you want to say, I have it. I went as a PR, so I wasn't asked all these numerous questions. Just, okay, where's your COPR document? Da, da, da. I had all of them. I forgot nothing except my postal code, which is minor but necessary. So you must have all these things. There was a time, I think this was 2023 in Canada, where they would ask you at the border, if you're a student, to share your bank statement. Yeah, your bank statement. So you must prepare. Okay, so let's say now you've gone through all that wahala at the airport. You've passed through all of that. What's week looking like? What is your first week looking like? When you get there, what are you going to do? You must know those ones. I'll give you an example and I'll use myself again. I already knew I had all my plans. I mean, as a manager, if I don't have all my plans, that would be a shame. Less, that would be a terrible shame. But I had everything planned out. I knew what I was going to do the first week. You need to get it first week. You need to go and you need to register your SIN. And I did my SIN at the airport. You need to do all of the registration. If you're going to Europe, there's something there. If you're going to Europe, maybe you're going to Finland, Austria, you need to go get your blue, they call it like a blue passport, but it's not a passport, it's a resident card, right? So you need to get that. So guys, as I'm talking, please, if you have any questions, drop it on the chat. So because I'd say like we can start our Q&A session. So please ask your question as we are talking, because we are already getting to the end. And I want to make sure that I'm answering as many questions as possible before we get to the end. So, like I was saying, you must know what you want to do. I also knew that I wanted to go to a newcomers, um, how do you like call it? There's something called like where you go to is for newcomers. It's newcomer center. So there's so many. Depending on the country you go to, there's always a newcomer center. Find yourself there. It will help you build your life in the new country. So please let's ask questions. We are towards the end already. Let's ask questions. Um, okay. Country after you've gone through all that stress, all that problems. You want to make sure that you're settling down is easy. So you complete your immigration or entry formalities. Anything that you can do at the airport, you can do it. But you don't need to buy a SIM at the airport. That's one thing. You actually do not need to buy a SIM at the airport. You can get it outside of the airport. But if you need to, maybe for internet purposes, then you can get a SIM at the airport. Just make sure that you are not shy enough to ask them for good deals, because as a newcomer, you have the right for to good deals. Another thing is opening a bank account. They give newcomers good deals for bank accounts. So make sure that you emphasize that I'm new here. What are the deals that you have for me? Right? So you do that. Securing accommodation, you should have done that before you get to that country. If not, you have to stay in an Airbnb for a month before you are able to find an accommodation, because sometimes accommodation finding can be difficult. So make sure that you try to secure your accommodation before you get into the country, and then report to your school and attend orientation. I cannot emphasize this enough. Many of the things I'm saying about your first week, etc., they will tell you in the school. Go to your school. If you are lost, you are confused, go to your school. They always have a student body to guide you through your coming in. They have so much resources. Take advantage of those resources. Okay. So we are in the Q&A session. This is just a couple of some of the visa we've done as a company. Some of the success visa. Most of these ones are even I think these are very recent ones. So I'm waiting for questions. I don't know why I'm not seeing any question. I feel like okay. So I have success stories, Mr. Ifeanyi, but for some reason I'm trying to add him to be able to join the live stream, and I'm trying to figure that out. See, I can't see how to do that. Let's see. Okay, how do I do this? Okay, I have a question here. Can a 2-2 lower still be able to study masters? 2-2 lower, again, like I said at the very beginning of this conversation, there's nothing like 2-2 lower. You have to give me an exact CGPA. What is the CGPA, right? Is it 2-2 of 2.7 or 2.5? Is it 2-2 of 3.1, 3.2? The specifics would help, right? Because a 2.2 of 2.5 cannot go for a master's in many countries. Yes, because they don't look at it, they look at it by percentage. So they can tell you 60%, and I think 60% should be about a 2.8, right? They can tell you 60%, they can tell you 70%, they can tell you 77%. It's always in percentage. So you have to do a conversion of of the of what you have to be able to see what the percentage will come up to. So you have to be very, very specific. Okay. So please let me know what the specific thing you have as a CGP is so that I can share. Okay, so I'm seeing good luck, Toby. Toby, how are you? Thank you for joining our webinar today. So I'm seeing that you studied public health. You want to study in Australia or West Indies, but you want a fully funded scholarship. Okay, so you don't have any finance, you have SOPs, you have transcript, you have passports. Okay. Of course, those are the basic things that you want to have. But I remember saying during this conversation, if you want to go to Australia, you want to get a scholarship, right? I can't at this point list out some of the scholarships that they have in Australia. But one important thing you must have is your English test. And you must have one of the highest points, right? Now, another thing is you need to determine which kind of scholarships they have available, right? Off the top of my head now, I can't even say to you, oh, these are some of the scholarship. You can send us an email at consultasng@gmail.com or services at consultace.info, and we'll be able to send you some of the scholarships that are available. But you will do the deep research yourself, of course. We'll just send you some of the list of scholarships that are available in Australia that you can look at, right? What you have is a 4.37. You may or may not get a full scholarship. You must have a compelling story. If you have a high 2.2, your story has to be extremely compelling for you to be able to get a scholarship, especially in public health. So my question to you would be, what have you done towards getting a scholarship in public health? Like, have you written a journal? Have you written, because this is public health we are talking about, so there's a lot of opportunities in public health, but have you written anything in journals? Have you written anything under in peer reports? Right? Are you a volunteer somewhere that has to do with helping the public and their health? I don't know how to break that up, but we know what public health is. Have you been in any volunteer service that has to do with health specifically? Or maybe providing clean water to a community? What have you done? These are the type of things that people with a high 2.2 will have to begin to describe in their SOPs. These are the things that matter. These are the things that will get you that scholarship. Because don't forget, you are not the only one trying to get that scholarship. There is over 1 million people trying to get the same scholarship you are trying to get. So what is that thing that is setting you apart? What is that struggle that you've been able to solve? That is what will get you into that school. So take note of that. So aside from the academic side of things, aside from getting your IELTS academy and making sure that you're getting one of the highest points, which is about 8 to 8.5 band. You must have a 8 minimum. You must have a 8 if you want to get a scholarship. But you can also have go beyond an 8 and get an 8.5, which is even better. Aside from that, what your SOP must have are these things that I have just mentioned. Okay, we'll be ending the live in 10 minutes. In 10 minutes time. We'll most likely have another webinar, say next month, where we'll do like a deep dive into some of these things. But so far, so good. If you need more questions, if you have more questions, you can send us an email. I already said our email address is services@consultace.info, or you can send an email to consultaceng@gmail.com. Okay, do we have any more questions? This is the Q&A session, please. Okay. Mm, okay. All right, guys. So, maybe you studied computer science, but so for some reason you found yourself in communication. Now, that's when your question comes into place. Because if you found yourself in communication, then that means you probably to further and do a master's in communication. So it means that your CV will now have to highlight your communication experience, and you pretty much have to have this communication experience for be 2 years and above to be able to convince a department of communication that you can and want to study a master's of communication, because normally computer science might not be a and eligibility requirements for that department's communication program. So that is how you tailor your CV to meet your academic specifications, right? By sharing your work experience and telling them that, okay, yes, my educational background is so, so, and so, but this is what I want to study, right? So because this is what I want to study, this is the experience I've had towards this particular thing. And let's just even say you want to actually study communication as a what's it called? As a master's degree as a computer science student major, right? You have to work towards some of these things. So for example, if you want to study communication, you should have things like a Medium account where you are writing, because writing is also part of communication. So you should have a Medium account where you are writing. Okay? So that is pretty much how you can tailor your CV to match what you want to study. Thank you guys for coming to this live. I know that the next live will be so much better. Thank you, Mr. Ifeanyi, for coming up to this live, even though we are unable to add you to give your testimonial. But I'm sure that we can have you on our next webinar. I guess by the next webinar, we would have been able to figure out the quirks of working a YouTube webinar, a YouTube live, where we are able to add other people to the live video. Thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, like I said, just email us at services@consultace.info or consultaceNG@gmail.com. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.